This is the WellFounder Podcast.
Welcome to the show, Chris. It's an absolute pleasure having you on today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming. I love speaking to other agencies. The knowledge I'm gaining from you guys, man, seriously, it's amazing, especially on the ad side of things, because there's so much demand for ads these days, and a lot of people are doing it wrong. And I'm sure you've got your own thoughts around how people are doing ads, and we're going to be talking about that today. Yeah? But before we dive in, I'd like to kick off by allowing my guests, tell us a little bit more about you, what you do, and how you got into it.
Sure. So, for first and foremost, you mentioned there that a lot of people are doing things wrong. In my mindset, I don't think there's necessarily a wrong and a right way to run ads. I just think there's a good or bad, a good and a better way to do it. That's my personal opinion. Look, a bit about me, a bit about the business, and kind of the problems that we solve for clients. So I'm Chris, one of the co-founders of JudeLuxe. We are a performance max Google Shopping PPC agency that specifically work for e-com brands. So I spent the last decade working with brands, turning ad spend into actual business outcomes, and not just pretty dashboards. And that's what I'm here to talk about today, is actual business outcomes. To give you a bit of a background, before JudeLuxe, I was working in business development roles for a number of agencies, pitching strategies, closing deals, looking to work with ambitious brands. And G, my co-founder, he was kind of the guy behind the scenes actually making the strategies work. So he was, deep in the weeds, building campaigns, testing bidding models, fixing the tracking when analytics has a big tantrum. So it's kind of like a front end and a back end here, and that's where we kind of met each other to a certain extent. One of the things that we kept running into, as a common theme, was that most brands were being told by their agencies that actually, they were crushing it, record numbers, like amazing, because the ROAS and the revenue numbers look good. But then when it came to the end of the month, they were like, well, where's the money in the bank? Like founders and marketing directors and things like that were getting blindsided by, cash flow and things like this. So everyone become a bit confused when like the reporting didn't match with the bank balance. So your agency screaming, "Oh, we've done 500k this month," and your bank balance says, "I can afford a tin of beans," right? There's a big difference. Everyone celebrates the 500k number, but your accountant or your CFO is like, "Hold on, there's a problem here." We've kind of put our heads together and built JudeLuxe for that one reason, to bridge the gap between, I guess, Google ads and somewhat agencies, what they report and what actually hits the profit and loss. So I guess in a nutshell, we are a Google ads agency for e-commerce brands. And first and foremost, I'll say we're not for everyone. We have kind of a specific type of client that we work with, or that it works best for. And these have typically moved past the early let's test it phase. And now need to know that the numbers actually mean something than just what they say on a dashboard or a spreadsheet. So, we don't typically work with kind of I call them like weekend hustlers, drop shipping phone cases from their mum's spare room or whatever. Like, hats off to you. That is a grind. That is great. And, I'm all about entrepreneurial spirit and everything like that. And that's great. You're just not the type of, we're just not the type of agency for you at this point. That's not to say, you can't be the next Alan Sugar and sell things from the back end of your car and then grow that business. And we might be at that point. But the type of things that we do and the strategies and the tactics that we put in place tend to, work better when there is the concepts have been proven with your product or the products you're selling and everything like that. So we kind of built for the... And again, this isn't meant in a derogatory way, but we're built for the stage when things starts to get real. When if you spend money on ads and it doesn't work, it stings a lot more. There's more people to report to. There's this, there's that, and if you've got your CFO on your case, and when you're managing cash flow, hiring staff, planning inventory, every wasted pound or dollar, depending on where you are, means that you might not be able to like order your next stock run. Yeah, and we started the business back when Google Ads was all about managing bids manually, sculpting your different match types, tinkering with the targeting. It was called smart shopping back then, and you had real levers to pull at the time. You could click more things, let's put it that way. Whereas now with Performance Max and AI and everything like that, the game has changed, right? There's less control. Google is taking more of an automation perspective on things, and it's gone from kind of pulling levers to more setting up and guiding the strategy. And I always use, one thing you'll get with me is I always put analogies in place and metaphors just to try and, I guess, so that a wider range of people can understand. It's like having a Formula One car. I could probably jump in a Formula One car today and I might crash it. I might drive really slow and, I might spin out or sit in the gravel. Or I could give it to Lewis Hamilton and he'll get there quicker, right? He knows how to do it. He knows what works. So yeah, look, the game has changed from more doing things to more thinking about things. And I know that sounds like a really silly analogy or a really silly way of phrasing this, but I think agency land now has gone from more of a doer to more of a thinker, and I think the agencies that are going to win going forward and the companies that win going forward are going to be those that are able to think strategically, and that ties in quite nicely to kind of the POAS model that we use. So yeah, it's, although the game's changed, like our mission as a business hasn't changed. We're still here to treat ad accounts and clients' budgets as kind of their own business unit. Because personally, I think strategy, structure, and applying commercial logic to things still wins. I feel like I've talking a lot about kind of JudeLuxe as a business there, but outside of work, for me personally, dad to a 6-year-old boy, he's autistic, keeps me grounded and kind of gives real meaning to what I do within life. Big sneakerhead. I love trainers. I could probably, I know more probably about Jordans than most people know about their own business. I'm a West Ham fan, so naturally I've built up a high pain tolerance, which helps in both, football and running PPC agents. But I'm not one of these people that has just done a $27 course that they found on Instagram that takes 24 hours posing next to, a Lamborghini in the sunshine. I've been around the block. I've seen kind of the spreadsheets and seen companies come and go. And a lot of it is down to misguided strategy. It's I think I said to you previously, I'm on kind of this one-man crusade to kind of clean up PPC world, because a barrier to entry for being a PPC agency now is owning a second-hand laptop, right? That is literally the barrier to entry. Anyone could get a laptop today and claim that they are a PPC agency in essence. So that's a bit about me, a bit about us, a bit about what we do and who we do it for. I just like to think that we are, I call ourselves the anti-agency agency, because we go a bit deeper than the traditional the traditional PPC agency.
I love that because of the agency industries. You're right. There's a lot of it's always a Lambo, or I've seen a couple of Ferraris. Some people.
Yeah. It's always in Dubai, right? It's always in the sunshine, or they're on a speedboat, or they're flexing the latest watch that they probably got from China. Like, and you know what? Like, if people have that grind once they've done that $27 course that I keep referring to, and they go on and they create things, look, you've got to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
But for me, social media and case studies and reviews and things like that, a lot of them are illusion, right?
Mm.
And especially now with AI and automation and everything coming in, it's more accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
So it's really about, understanding businesses, understanding business problems, and then coming up with solutions and tactics that fit that. These are going to be the guys that win. And like I'm laying smackdown on these freelancer one-man bands. We've seen big agencies, big agencies, multinational agencies, that can't compete with some of these freelancers. Some of these freelancers are great. Like that's I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush here. There's big agencies that have lost PPC accounts to one-man bands. Look, there's a lot of noise in PPC land, and a lot of smoke and mirrors. I'm on that one-man superhero crusade to try and clear it up. And hopefully, what I talk about today is going to give more of a picture into perhaps what some businesses should be looking at rather than just top-level numbers.
I love it because it's a very good way to position yourself as well, and separate yourself from all the noise out there. And there's a couple of things you said there that I just have to go there. Like you said, you talked about one thing that put me off with working with the e-commerce was exactly what you said. I just felt there's more. Is there a word for? There's more free. There's more people doing it in their bedrooms than proper businesses, if that makes sense. So I was just thinking maybe that niche is not big enough. Like, do I want to say serious business? Maybe that's not the right word. But what are your thoughts around that? Are you finding that there's more proper businesses than people doing dropshipping in the e-commerce world?
I think dropshipping has had its day, personally, unless you can find a diamond in the rough, right? I think, if you went on to social media 5, 6, 7 years ago, everything was become a drop shipper. It's amazing. We'll do this, we'll do that. And then it was start your own social media agency. We'll do this, we'll do that. You'll become a millionaire overnight. It doesn't happen that way. I am not a millionaire. I don't, but I think I would say 99% of drop shipping businesses do not work, especially in the paid media channels, because the margins are very small. You look at Google Shopping, where price is arguably one of the biggest factors to conversion. The drop shipping method doesn't allow you to compete on price. But look, we, as a business, we work with people, and again, I say we don't work with drop shippers, or people in their bedroom, but we have in the past worked with people in the bedroom who have gone on to, buy warehouses, employ staff, go from 0 to 150K a month turnover in 12 months, right?
Wow.
So I'm not saying that it doesn't work for everyone. I'm just saying, actually, do you know what? With kind of everything you see on social media with drop shipping and things like that, and the courses that all these people throw out, it's just be careful what you believe, right? And my mindset on that is, if these guys were earning that much money, why would they be selling you a course for 27 quid on a recurring monthly subscription? That's how they're monetizing themselves, right? So yeah, look, we work with all businesses, shapes and size, but once the concept of the business is proven, and that's really when I think people should be taking Google Ads super seriously. We are a PPC only agency. We only do Google Ads. That is our specialism. Every kind of marketing channel requires, in my mind, its own different skill sets. And we would much rather be a master of one trade than a jack of all. But look, there's definitely a lot of e-commerce businesses out there who are proper. And also, if you want to sit in your, bedroom and sell products, you can. One of our biggest clients is a sole trader. He spends, or will be spending, north of £2 million on Google Ads this year. He is a sole trader.
Oh, wow.
So, but again, this goes to show why, a one size fits all strategy doesn't
Mm.
work for everyone, right? And we'll touch on this in a bit, I would imagine, but it's it's one of the kind of key mantras for what we have here as a business is that everyone gets their own bespoke strategy. Whether you, let's just say you sell a skincare product and we already work with a skincare company, you will not have a cookie cutter approach because your business is completely different. Your profit margins are different. Your cost of goods sold are different. Your OPEX, your warehousing costs, whether you work with a 3PL or whether you ship directly, like everything is different, and therefore your approach to marketing needs to be different as well. And these are the people that are going to win.
Yeah, I couldn't agree, man. I love the whole emphasis on strategy as well. I really like that. That's really what's going to differentiate anybody going forward now. Which brings us to your POAS, profit on ad spend approach. Very, very curious about that because I'm familiar with return on ad spend.
As is everyone.
So what is it now, and what is the difference?
Yeah, do you know what? I always say this. ROAS for me is like a swear word, right? It's like whenever someone says that, it makes my ears hurt, and I'm like, oh. And don't get me wrong, there's times where ROAS works, and it suits a business operation. However, what we find, and when we speak to these people, where they come up to us and they say, "Hey, we've got 10 times ROAS, but actually, we've got minus 50 grand in the bank." We're like, there's a problem here, and we tend to think it's ROAS. So, to give you kind of a quick summary of ROAS or versus POAS or however you want to look at it. So, POAS is exactly the same. The last three letters do stand for on advertising spend, but instead of revenue on advertising spend, it's profit on advertising spend, right? So it's your actual profit divided by your ad spend. So not revenue, not ROAS. It's what's left once everyone's taken their cut. So if I'll give you an example, right? So let's just say you spend £10,000 a month on Google Ads today or this month. You make 100 grand in revenue. Your agency sat there clapping, going, brilliant, 10 times ROAS, like amazing. Everyone's buzzing. They're all having a party in the office. Like the screenshot goes on Slack, gets dropped into the next cred deck that they're going to send to their next prospect. But then kind of once the dust has settled, and kind of the grown-up numbers kick in, you start to look at that 10 times ROAS and you go, okay. So, as an example that I just gave there, right? You spend 10K, you get 100K back. It's 10 times ROAS in normal numbers. But that doesn't factor in, let's just say, your COGS. So your cost of goods sold is 50%, right? So that's 50K of your revenue gone already. You're now down to 5K. You're now down to 5 times ROAS. So your 10 times ROAS doesn't look as great. 5 times, you're still like, okay, 5 times, that's all right. And then you go, my OPEX, my operational expenses, my team salary, my warehouse, my fulfillment, my packaging, that's, let's just say, another 20K off. You're now down to 3 times ROAS, and you sat there going, 3 times, like, and I'll go to an extreme example. Let's just say you license products. Let's just say you're selling Harry Potter merchandise, right? Warner Brothers take a slice of that and royalties. That's another 10K. So now you're down to 2 times. Or let's just say you work in fashion. Especially if you're in fashion, this one works. ROAS doesn't factor in returns. I always use this analogy, and I always get like stern eyes from the missus. But let's just say the missus buys 2 dresses because your free delivery is over £75. She tries them on, sends one back. Google logs both of them as a conversion, but that return just halved your margin, right?
Jeez, yeah.
Then you pay your agency like 2K. So now you're left with, somewhere between 10 and 15K profit. Where at the beginning of the month, in your report and everything like that, you're celebrating 100 grand.
Yeah.
So your POAS on that is like 1, a POAS of 1.2, something like that, not the 10 times. So you get what I mean? It's like a real world example of this. And I mentioned right at the beginning, I used to work in sales. So every month I'd open my pay slip, and the first thing I'd look at, or the first thing I'd see, would be my gross pay, right? The salary, the commissions, the holiday. It looked amazing. I'm going straight online. I'm on Rolex's website, checking out the new Submariner. Then I look down and I'm like, national insurance, tax, pension, all the deductions. Like suddenly I'm off Rolex's website and I'm looking on, Casio's website if I can get away with the latest calculator watch, right? And I think that's a real world example of
Yeah.
ROAS versus POAS, right? It's, if you look at your wage slip, you look at the gross number, that's ROAS. You
Yeah.
look at the net number, that's POAS, right? It factors in every element of this, and the really difficult thing for me to comprehend, and you'll see that I get quite passionate about it, is that actually some of the agencies I used to work for, they didn't know the difference. They would report on revenue, and then not listen to the business owner who sat there going, well, revenue's great, but how do I turn the lights on next month? Or, why do I have to go to my accountant and ask whether I can afford to put the next stock order in from the latest, like my fashion warehouse in the Netherlands or whatever, right? It's yeah, and then you look at it from kind of a Google perspective and how Google Ads works and the mechanisms behind it, and it's I mentioned briefly about like the Harry Potter scenario whereby those licensed products with kind of royalty fees are being most Google Ads accounts we look at, they're all put into the same campaigns. And the issue is you're telling Google product A, which let's just say has a 70% gross profit margin, is the same as product B that has a 10% gross profit margin, right? So you're giving it the same targets, you're giving it the same goals, and Google's going, well, it don't really matter here. Like, I'll do whatever I want. And that's kind of the problem. Like Google just sees revenue numbers. It doesn't see the bottom line numbers to the business. It just sees the conversions. And that's the problem, right? So Google's auction doesn't think like a CFO. It's looking at the signals, it's looking at the click-through rates, it's looking at the conversion data, the audience behavior. If a product's getting conversions and looks healthy on paper, it gets fed more budget. But if it doesn't know your margins, it doesn't know that product A has a significantly higher net profit margin once you take everything off than product B that might have licensing fees, high return rates, a customer that churns and whatnot. So product B eats all the budget because it looks efficient, but real life numbers, it's not efficient. So yeah, for us, kind of POAS is the model. That's kind of POAS in a nutshell, really. I feel like I'm giving the commercial spiel, and also our kind of day-to-day real world life.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I love your minimum wage analogy because it makes too much sense. You see a lot of agencies leading with the ROAS, 10x this, 20x this, all that good stuff. But I'm thinking you're spot on. If I spend, if it turns out that I generated 100K in sales, and I'm in the red, that's a big problem right there. You could be generating all this revenue and end up going bankrupt. So that's not a good thing or a good place to be in. And I was going to ask, why should founders then shift their focus from ROAS to this POAS approach? But I think you mentioned one there in terms of, not, you don't want to go bankrupt, but what are your thoughts around that? Why should they be thinking about this, and how can an agency actually help with this actually? But let's start with the why first.
Yeah, do you know what? I always bang the POAS drum, and that's kind of how we run accounts. And as I said at the start, for us, there isn't a kind of right and wrong way to do it. But in a nutshell, for me, ROAS is a bit of a trap. It's a bit of a false sense of security. When it comes to Google Ads, you chase ROAS and you end up scaling what looks good in the ad account, but it doesn't marry up with what looks good for the business. But like, let me be fair here. There are moments when chasing ROAS and chasing revenue makes sense. I'm not saying POAS is gospel for every brand every single time. Let's just say you've closed Series B funding, you've got 18 months of cash, growth targets breathing down your neck, and a mandate to grab as much of the market share as possible. You're not necessarily trying to squeeze every penny of profit today. You're buying customers. You're intentionally, running acquisition at break even or below, because actually your lifetime value model is strong and your back end's dialed in. That's a valid reason why you'd go down the ROAS route, right? So if that's the case, do it. But not every business has that luxury of having 18 months of runway, right? So I feel that when most people get it wrong, they kind of use that playbook while running Bootstrapped. And typical business books will tell you should have 3 months cash worth of runway in the bank and yada yada yada. It's a completely different game. You can't afford to buy growth if you're not funded for it. And again, you go on LinkedIn and you see all these things where it's like, oh, we've broken down the Google ad strategy for Nike. And you're like, yeah, but Nike is a multi-billion-pound company. You are not selling, like pet rocks from a store in Scunthorpe, right? You can't treat you can't treat both the same. It just doesn't work. So yeah, look, POAS might not be right for everyone, but for most kind of D2C brands trying to grow that without burning margin and want to remain in a profitable state, it's the difference between kind of looking good and having money in the account, right? Look, if you want to flex massive revenue numbers, but then have nothing in the bank at the end of the day, that's entirely your choice. And again, I don't claim to be the best business mogul ever, but the numbers are the numbers. If you've got money in the bank at the end of the day, you're doing better than a lot of businesses. So focusing on that POAS model is for me fairly sound advice, depending on your business structure, your business model, and the infrastructure you have around that business. I would say actually, I don't ever claim to chuck the POAS model at everyone. When businesses inquire with us, I'll often get, so what's the strategy? Or how much is it going to cost? And I again, what you'll see with me here is there's always a use of a metaphor or always a use of analogy. And I always use the same one for this. And it's always when you walk into a doctor's surgery and sit down after you've booked an appointment, or if you're on the NHS, 3-week waiting list, different story. You sit down and the doctor just chucks some antibiotics at you. Like, it just doesn't happen. The doctor will sit there and he will ask you questions about what you're suffering from, right? So it's the same with what a PPC agency should do. If any PPC agency, and again, this is a personal opinion, you can shoot me down for it if you really want to. If any PPC agency gives you a price without looking at your Google ad account, I would be very skeptical. It is exactly like walking into doctor's surgery and him just throwing antibiotics at you and telling you to get out. Until you understand the business model, how the business operates, what its lifetime value is, what its payback is, what their best selling products are, and not necessarily from the business, but what the data says the best selling products are. Are they high margin, low margin? You can't prescribe POAS, right? So yeah, look, I would say POAS is a model, ROAS is a model. Depending on your business model, it's up to you to make that decision. But I'm just here to tell the truth, right? I'm here to tell you that POAS is the reality, and ROAS is, vanity. G, my business partner, and I, we always have an internal discussion with ourselves as to whether ROAS was created by Google itself as a yardstick that fit everyone. And it's just been the go-to metric for every advertising platform going forward, right? It's I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but you kind of understand that actually, the question you asked was, why should founders shift their focus to POAS? They should shift their focus because ROAS is a trap. It is an illusion. Once you take everything off, that's your true growth. And if you scale based purely on ROAS, you might be scaling the wrong numbers. The percentages just don't work for some businesses. So yeah, that's my spiel on why POAS could be a good option. I'm not here to say definitely an option, because I don't know what position most of these businesses are in, right?
Yeah, I can see how POAS works for both types of business. Like I would say that would be the but I could see how ROAS could work for somebody that is just like a marketing head or something that is just there to show. He just wants to show that his ads are performing, and he's like, check out, we're doing TEDx here. That's my job done here. But okay, so that makes
100%, right? POAS speaks to
yeah
the founder,
yeah
the shareholder, and the CFO. ROAS speaks your agency language and your marketing, your CMO's language, right? Yeah, I'd be very surprised if CMOs and CFOs agreed that ROAS was the right option.
Yeah, I agree. Which kind of leads me to the next question: then, how can an agency? Because I love how you guys are. Because that's me as well. Anytime I work with a client, I want to actually make their money, which is not a good thing because of I'm stuck. I want to actually help you make money. So you probably relate to this. So how then can an agency help? Because if you want to know if they're making profit on their spend, I'm guessing you're gonna have, like you said, you're gonna have to dive deep into their books. And I don't think every founder will be comfortable with that, or are they comfortable with that? I don't know. You tell me. What has your experience been with that?
Yeah, I think I very rarely get someone come back and say, I'm not comfortable sharing that. And if you're not comfortable sharing it, that's entirely your choice. Personally, we're happy to sign NDAs.
Okay.
Again, that doesn't always reassure people, but we've been doing this for a long time. We work with various different businesses, shapes, sizes. Any problem that an e-commerce business has, whether it's PPC specific or other business related problems, you can probably rest assured that actually we've had that conversation with an e-commerce brand before, right? Whether you sell shoes or whether you sell plumbing parts, typically the problems that you feel, with slight nuances, are the same, right? Is it high costs? Is it high return rates? Is it slow fulfillment? Is it this? Is it that? Right? That I guess the methodology behind e-commerce is very similar depending on what the products that you sell. Don't get me wrong, there's different nuances depending on the commercial models. Like if you have a subscription model business, they would act differently and behave differently, and expect different outcomes from someone that is a high ticket one-off purchase, let's just say a luxury watch, right? That they behave differently and have different problems. But ultimately, if someone came to us and said, how do I apply that kind of POAS first approach into Google Ads? The first and foremost, if you were going to use an agency, you need to be willing to share your margin data. If you're doing it in-house or internal teams and things like that, again, share the data. And when I say share the data, I don't just mean it's around 40%, right? Because that doesn't help. Is it 40%? Is it 31%? Is it 42%? Is it 43%? Are all of your products 40%? To be vague doesn't help. So as an agency, what we do is we share a cog sheet or a profit sheet, and we want it at SKU level, right? So that would be, I use skincare example because it's quite an easy one to explain. Skincare comes in different volumes, right? So you might have 10 mil, 50 mil, 100 mil, 150 mil, right? If you just say 40%, well, I'm not sure I believe that based on actually economy of scale, right? Surely the more that you make, the margin is greater in the larger product, right? Potentially, again, there's definitely different nuances, but you should be aware at a SKU level what your profit is after the cost of goods sold, so what it costs to make or purchase that product, the fulfillment, what it costs to get it out the door, any royalties that you need to pay to Warner Brothers or Disney or whoever, customer services, everything. You need to understand actually what it costs for me to get this product in or make the product, get it out the door. And that includes everything, right? You need that at a SKU level, in my opinion, or at least product category level as a minimum, right? Just saying a 40% margin across the board doesn't really help anyone. When it comes to Google Ads and Merchant Center, I would be using custom labels in the product feed, and within that, doing it kind of high margin, mid margin, low margin, label it with licensed or own brand or subscription trial or one-time purchase or whatever, right? Depending on your SKU range, takes about 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And again, these are kind of vague numbers depending on the number of products. One of our clients has got 6 million products. That doesn't take 10 minutes, I can assure you that. But it gives you total control over, I say total control, it's Google, they don't ever give you total control. It gives you somewhat control over what's being served in which campaign. And then what I would look to do from there is split your campaigns out based on those labels. So one thing that is a big bugbear of mine, and I don't know how well you or your audience are with Performance Max, is notoriously a black box with Google. You basically lump products into a campaign and hope for the best, or throw as much shit at the wall and see what sticks, or that's the approach that a lot of audits I've done recently have taken. So yeah, split the campaigns out. No more kind of everything in one Performance Max setup because that's lazy. High margin SKUs get their own campaigns. Subscription trials might be in their own group, but with a lower POAS target because a subscription model pays back month after month after month if they remain a subscriber. You need to have the right infrastructure in the back end to follow up on subscription trials and things like that. But ultimately, your POAS, or if you go back to ROAS, your POAS or your ROAS target needs to be adjusted for lifetime value. Licensed products, keep them isolated so that actually the royalties don't eat to scale budget. Look, there's plenty of levers you can pull, and how complex you get is entirely up to you, or how well your agency are informed on this stuff. For us, we have the ability in-house to move products between campaigns based on daily data, so it's dynamic, which helps. Giving budget to products that are selling at a high margin should surely be your one of your key drivers in business growth. If a particular product goes out of stock or starts to not perform, again, you can move products down a campaign and allocate separate budgets there and push campaigns in between depending on various things, right? So for us personally, we add custom columns into Google Ads. You want to know which campaigns, products, and asset groups are actually profitable, not just the ones that are getting the most clicks or the most impressions, unless you're running, brand awareness campaigns. Most e-commerce businesses, typically, unless they fully saturate, the bottom of funnel, won't run many brand awareness campaigns. PMax has the ability to do so across YouTube and display and Gmail and things like that. But yeah, it's for us, the columns that you have within Google at the moment are very, again, geared towards ROAS, geared towards revenue, geared towards kind of illusion, because ultimately if Google Ads as a platform can show a bigger number, you're going to spend more money with it, right? It's but it's not often, it's not often the reality. And then, set rules within the platform. So for us, we rarely scale anything under kind of a 1.3 times POAS, unless it has a lifetime value attached to it. And then it's a case of buying customers because you know over a period of time they're going to pay back. We typically cut anything below 1 times POAS unless it's part of kind of a bundle or a retention play. Yeah, look, I mean, having these rules in place and everything that I've just discussed in place isn't the holy grail. It's not going to be the silver bullet that's going to save your business overnight, but it will put you on the right path to actually understanding the profit that you get back from each of these campaigns, because you'd be surprised at how many winning campaigns in Google Ads are quietly killing margin. It's not, this isn't theoretical. This is how we as a business apply this knowledge to Google Ads to stop money leaks, and find the stuff that's actually worth scaling. Because if you scale the wrong products at the wrong margin, you are not scaling growth, you are scaling losses. And people may shoot me down for that statement, but that is, it's reality. I think I said to you before, we aren't the agency for everyone. We are straight talking. We will tell you as it is. And again, going back to the analogies, if I think your baby is ugly, we will tell you your baby is ugly. Whether it's a physical baby is to be determined. But if you want to call your business your baby, and I think it's ugly, or I think something's not quite right, or something's not quite, as an agency, you pay me to help you grow. You don't pay me to just nod and be a dog and go, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, sir. Like, I'm here to grow your business. And sometimes these are difficult conversations to have with business owners, but ultimately, very rarely have I come back and had a business owner say to me, like, get angry because I've told him something that actually supports his business growth. A lot of agencies just sit there and are just yes men. Like, if you come to me as a client and you say this, and this, if I don't think it's going to work, I'm not going to apply it. And whether you like that or not is up to you. There will be plenty of agencies that will apply what you've just asked them to do. I'm open to a business conversation and a commercial conversation around it to say, oh, actually, yeah, that's a good idea. Have we thought about doing it this way? Or actually, here's why it won't work. Or actually, based on our experience or the 10 years that we've been doing this with various, businesses in your industry or your commercial model, we don't think that's going to work. We think actually your new customer acquisition numbers are going to drop across the board. We don't recommend applying that. And yeah, look, I'll be quite honest and frank. We have lost some clients because we've pushed back hard to say, actually, no, it's against our ethics to do that, because we're here to do what's best for your business. And it's the same with, people that ring up from Google and say, hey, we get it all the time, right? Even as an agency, like they ring us and say, hey, we've noticed this in your one of your clients' Google Ads accounts. You should switch everything to broad match and increase the budget by 100%. And we just tell them no, like, it's not for the benefit of our business. And it's quite funny, actually. We had an email not so long ago, which was a Google recommendation. And it said something like, increase your budget by £150 a day for 0 more conversions. And we were like, doesn't quite make sense, does it? And a lot of these calls that you get from Google are actually sales reps. They're not account managers, and some of these Google reps are great, right? But I would say it's probably within the 10 to 20% mark. I could open my phone now and you would just see missed call after missed call after missed call from Google Ads trying to tell me basically I need to increase client budgets.
Yeah.
The only thing that increases is the budget for Google Ads' Christmas party. So it doesn't, it's not the benefit of the client. So we're not doing it, right? So yeah, look, there's probably 4 or 5 steps that I've just touched on there that will, I don't want to say overnight support your business, or change it. Google Ads is a very volatile platform. If you make heavy changes, you will rock it. But applying these kind of in incremental steps will definitely help. But first and foremost, the most important thing to practically kind of apply it to, that approach to the Google Ads is to understand your numbers. That's one thing that I'm adamant on is that businesses need to understand their numbers.
I agree. That's such a powerful way to wrap it up, and you really, really, really delivered on this POAS side of things. Because for me, if I was a business owner, that's what I'll be more concerned with than even the ROAS. So that is perfect way to thank you so much for that, Chris. And just as we wrap up, then I always like to ask my guests for a final tip. If there's something you could leave us with regarding Google Ads, what would that be? I know you talked about understanding your numbers. I think that's super powerful. But if there's one more that you could share, that would be awesome.
Uh, I'd probably say there's two, and I'll wrap it up quite short. Firstly, I would say stop giving every conversion the same value. Again, we used the royalties one earlier today. You know, your cost of goods sold and your OPEX and your royalties paid or your return rates or delivery costs or whatever are all different product wise for most businesses, right? Stop giving Google the autonomy to treat every product the same. Most ad accounts treat a £15 sale with £4 profit and a £90 order with a £40 profit like they're equal wins. They're not. One is like a snack, the other feeds the whole team. There's a big difference. And then I would say the one thing that I feel gets neglected the most when it comes to e-commerce on Google Ads is product feed optimization, right? It is the backbone of every e-commerce campaign on shopping and Performance Max. That product feed tells Google what your product is. Google doesn't understand what your product is unless your product feed is matched in a way that it understands. Now, that can be something as simple as, let's just say, I don't know, you have a pair of shoes and you want to appear for, shoes for men to go on a night out, argument's sake, right? Like what I see a lot of product feeds and product titles and things like this is actually they just have brand, product name, and that's it, or brand, product name, size, brand, product name, color. And it's like, that's not how the general public search for things. So with Google Shopping, actually, you can't specify what you appear for. Like you can't select a keyword. All of those keywords are chosen by Google on the back end of your product feed. Now, if you want to appear for shoes for night out, that's great. But if it's not mentioned within your product feed, you're not going to appear, or very rarely you're going to appear. Product feed neglect is probably, along with ROAS, is one of my swear words when it comes to e-com marketing. Everything that Google knows about your product, your store, is inherently held within that product feed. Check your products. There's definitely different ways that actually you can pull the product feed and make changes to it without having to make physical changes to your website. A lot of agencies neglect the product feed, even though arguably it's the most important part of Google Shopping and PMax. So yeah, look, in kind of a nutshell, stop treating all products the same, because they're not, or stop allowing Google to treat all products the same, and stop neglecting your product feed. If you even make slight changes to the product feed, you will likely get an uplift in conversion values, conversion numbers, and ultimately, if you adopt the POAS model, more profit as well.
I love it. Such a powerful tip right there. You're focused on helping them make real money, and that is where I'm at as well with this guy. So brilliant. Chris, where can our listeners or viewers go learn more about you, possibly work with you? What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this afterwards and how I was going to end with a massive statement. But in all honesty, the best place to find me and what we do as a business is probably LinkedIn. It's the thing that I use the most. I post daily about what we're seeing actually in campaigns. What happens when you apply a POAS first strategy, the kind of campaign structure tips, the teardowns, and often an occasional rant about why kind of just trusting the algorithm isn't a strategy. So yeah, look, listeners can go on LinkedIn. They can search Chris Avery and probably JudeLuxe, and it will come up. But I guess you'll know it's me from seeing a post where I'm roasting someone's 6 times ROAS campaign because they've lost money in real terms. But look, we also have a website. It's JudeLuxe.com. I guess fair warning on that one is very much a done is better than perfect situation on that website right now. We're on website Mark 5, Mark 6 is in the process. But like most agencies, right, we're last in the queue when it comes to updating our own stuff because we focus primarily on our clients. But yeah, look, LinkedIn, that's kind of where all the good stuff lives. If you're a founder, a CMO, a CFO, who actually wants to know where the profit's coming from, or more importantly, actually where it's leaking, that's normally where you'll find us. And ultimately, look, more than happy to have a look at ad campaigns for people. With no obligation on the back of it. What you do with that detail that I give you is up to you. Happy to quote and tell you what it would cost for us to run it. Happy for you to go back and give it to your existing agency if you really want to. That's entirely up to you. But I always liken that to asking an arsonist to rebuild your house once he's torched it. But look, we offer free audits like most PPC agencies do. We go a bit deeper in terms of understanding the profitability before the audit, because an audit provides an audit without context is just a slagging match. Anyone could get access to a campaign today and tell you, and your campaigns are crap based on the narrative that they want to spin. For us, an audit is about tangible actions going forward. So yeah, look, find us on LinkedIn. I'm not selling any $27 courses, I can assure you that. I don't have a Lamborghini. I'm not a millionaire. I'm just here to, I'm just here to make other people's business work.
Sweet Lord. Not yet, anyway.
Not yet. It's Euro Millions tonight, so we'll see.
Oh Lord, thank you so much for coming, Chris. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure.